In the grimy, rain-slicked alleyways of a city that had long since forgotten the meaning of hope, a legend was being forged in blood, sweat, and an unbreakable will. His name was Jat, but to the underground fight circuit that thrived in the city's forgotten underbelly, he was known only as fighter Jat50 Oreo. The 50 wasn't a random number. It was a grim tally, a self-imposed curse he carried on his back, a promise to himself that he would win 50 consecutive no-holds-barred fights before he could even think of walking away from this brutal life. Tonight he stood at 49. The air in the derelict warehouse was thick with the stench of cheap alcohol, unwashed bodies, and the metallic tang of blood. A single flickering bulb cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to reach for him, like the ghosts of his past. A past that had stolen everything from him and left him with nothing but his fists and a burning, white-hot rage. He remembered the night his world ended. The screech of tires, the shattering of glass, the cold, indifferent eyes of the man behind the wheel, who'd been texting a message more important than a human life. That man, a wealthy, untouchable, heir to a corporate empire, had walked away with a slap on the wrist while Jat's sister, his only family, his entire world, was gone in an instant. The justice system had failed him, so he'd created his own. Every punch he threw, every bone he broke was a step closer to the money he needed to buy the truth, to expose the corruption that had shielded his sister's killer. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for a ghost, for a memory, for a justice that could never truly be served but had to be sought nonetheless. His opponent for the 50th fight was a mountain of a man named Kyle, a former enforcer for the very syndicate that protected the man Jat hunted. Kyle's reputation was built on brutality. He didn't just win fights. He dismantled his opponents, leaving them as broken husks. The crowd, a sea of hungry, vicious faces, roared for blood, their chants of "Kale, Kale," echoing off the rusted metal walls. They saw Jat as just another piece of meat for the grinder, a wiry, exhausted fighter who'd clearly run his course. They didn't see the fire in his eyes, a fire that had been burning for 2 long years. A fire that had consumed his grief and forged it into pure, unadulterated purpose. The bell clanged, a harsh metallic sound that cut through the noise, and the fight began. Kale charged like a bull, his massive fists swinging with enough force to shatter concrete. Jat, moving with a desperate fluid grace, ducked and weaved, his body aching from 100 previous battles, his lungs burning. He took a glancing blow to the ribs that sent a jolt of agony through him, a reminder of his own mortality. He stumbled back, tasting blood in his mouth, the crowd's jeers growing louder. In that moment of vulnerability, his sister's face flashed in his mind, not as she was in the morgue, but as she was in life, laughing, full of light, her hand on his shoulder telling him to be strong. That memory was his anchor, his source of power. He stopped retreating. He planted his feet on the cold, dirty concrete, his eyes locking onto Kale's with a terrifying calm. The next charge came, and this time, Jat didn't dodge. He met it, head-on, slipping inside Kale's guard with a speed that belied his exhaustion, driving a short, brutal uppercut into the giant's solar plexus. The air whooshed out of Kale, his charge faltering. It was the opening Jat needed. What followed was a blur of controlled violence, a liver shot that made Kale gasp, a spinning back kick that cracked against his jaw, a flurry of hooks and crosses that were less about technique and more about raw, desperate will. Jat was a storm, a force of nature fueled by 2 years of pent-up anguish and a singular, unwavering goal. He wasn't just fighting Kale. He was fighting the entire system that had failed him. Every corrupt official, every indifferent bystander, every moment of weakness he'd ever felt. With a final earth-shattering roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the warehouse, Jat unleashed a devastating